It's Wednesday, June 11th, and time for another edition with Wednesday with Walton and Reis here at thecardinalnation.com in video form and in audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. I'm Brian Walton, and my co-host is Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Just got back from some time away, and if I was, sat at the cool kids table at lunch, I would say I was on away on assignment. But the reality is, I took some vacation, and that's okay too, right? Got to get away from things every now and then.
Brian, I'll tell you, I can't wait for a vacation myself if and when one ever comes.
Yes, and hopefully it'll be before you, well, maybe or after you get back into your own place.
Yeah, what we'll see.
So you did a little bit of traveling recently down to the stadium for an annual event called Blogger Day, and it is something that the Cardinals do to give those who write about the team who aren't directly covering the team or the organization an opportunity to talk with some of the key people and the decision makers. And it's a wise thing on the part of the Cardinals, I think, to let some of the influencers, get a chance to speak directly with the honchos. So, Kyle, tell everybody a little bit about the format of Blogger Day, and then maybe get into a few of the takeaways that you got from it, please.
So my understanding is that the format has changed a little bit over the years. This was John Mozeliak's 13th Blogger Day. It started 15 years ago, but they didn't do one in 2000 because of COVID, and then again in 2020 because of COVID, and then again in 2021 because of COVID. Coming back from that. So in all of these years, they've only missed two. Mo's done it for 13 years, and over the years it's changed. But and over the last like 7 or 8 versions of it, they'll invite X amount of bloggers. I don't know who chooses. For a while there, Daniel Shoptaw, who goes by C70 on Twitter, he was the one who would kind of like submit a list. That doesn't happen anymore. I believe it's a social media team that's kind of in charge of that. And they invite a small group of us to come. Now we get to sit in a suite. They drink. They give us food. They give us booze. They give us non-booze, which is probably what we should have done, but we libated and and
Hopefully there wasn't too much of a window between when you arrived and when the big guy came in, but I guess we'll find out about that.
Yeah, Brian, it's funny. Normally, yeah, since you brought it up, normally I get in there as close to Mo doing the Q&A as possible. But I was kind of put in charge of we wanted to get him a little something as a thank you for doing this all these years. We are a fan base, a blogger base that does not get this. Like we get this. No other organization really does this for their bloggers. So I just thought it was nice to get him a little something. So I had to get in there early, Brian, and we got right at it from the get go. Both myself and my girlfriend were drinking at the beginning. So yeah,
So stop now, stop here.
yeah,
You got to tell them what the gift was because it was very creative, very unique, limited edition, quantity one. So
yeah.
something nobody else has.
Yeah, a one of one John Mozeliak bobblehead. We put I worked with a company called bobbleheads.com, and it's only fair that I throw that out there. And they crafted via pictures and my input a John Mozeliak bobblehead with a bow tie. I found a specific bow tie. It was red, white, and blue, and they kind of nailed it exactly right. The bow tie that I wanted. He was wearing a blue suit with a white shirt, some loafers because I mean, of course, he's got to wear loafers. So, and they absolutely nailed it. So, we went through the Q&A. He had his introduction. He did his State of the Union. We went through the whole Q&A, and then we were allowed to barge in. I just said a couple quick little words, presented it with him, and he seemed legitimately thrilled, legitimately surprised, and that was really cool. It was a really cool
Good.
moment
Good.
because yeah, it can be tense. Those Q and A's 2 years ago when we did the 2023 one, it was tense. Somebody asked in there if he wished that they were in the position that the Cincinnati Reds were in with young players coming up. And that was a really weird moment that like to kind of remind us all of where we were in 2023 watching the Cardinals lose for the first time in 25 years or whatever it was.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it has been tense. And during the Q&A, he mentioned that the offseason they did have tense moments with Nolan Arenado, but they hugged it out. So that allowed me the platform when I presented it to him. The bobblehead did Mr. Mosaic, like I could say. We have also had our tense moments, but this is us hugging it out as a thank you for doing this for us and also all of the winning years of baseball that he helped cultivate any way you cut it, even if you want to be critical about it.
So now, in terms of the remarks, Did you get any dirt? Did you get any good, insight that you didn't know already? Or, I mean, I'm assuming somebody after asked him if they were going to be buyers or sellers, and what are some of the things he said that are noteworthy?
Yeah, it's that same kind of stuff with the buyers and sellers. He did say that the next couple of weeks will determine that. The team has every chance to become buyers or be put in a selling position, but it's all depends on where they're at in the coming weeks. He said it's still too early to tell. He mentioned that he loves watching this team play. He thinks that this iteration of the St. Louis Cardinals, maybe they don't have the. He didn't say this one way or the other. He was not implying when he said this that the Cardinals are so talented that they could win every game. But what he was saying is that he likes watching this Cardinal team because they're gritty, they play with energy, and because on any given night he feels like they believe that they can win any night. And they've been in so many games, they've hardly been out of any game. And he just kind of talked about how he's really enjoyed watching this team. He drew a very light comparison to the 2004 team. Just because like they got off to kind of a weird start in April, middle at the beginning of May, and then put it together. But he was talking more about like their culture in the clubhouse, where they knew that
Yeah, good, because I don't think there's an MV3 or an MV1 or an MV half.
yeah, yeah. It was funny because then he drew the parallel to like 2023, where he was like, you just kind of knew after you got such a bad start that it wasn't like the team didn't think they could win. It was just there was such desperation to win that every loss had so much more weight. So, I thought that was really interesting. And truth be told, like other than that, it was a lot of questions reflecting on his time as a St. Louis Cardinal. They asked what his biggest regret was, and he mentioned the Ozuna trade. He said, and he was like, it'd have to be the Ozuna trade, almost like,
I
you
thought
know,
I thought you would have said it was when he was quoted as saying that Dylan Carlson reminded him of Albert Pujols and Oscar Taveras, but
Yeah, well, maybe more pressing to our interests, Brian, and why people are listening to us. Good segue there is one person asked him who his Mo prospect is right now, and he went to our boy Ray Rodriguez. He said Rainiel Rodriguez is his like the one that gets him the most excited because of his unique profile and what he did to start the year. He even prefaced it by saying that he doesn't usually get excited about players that are so far away and so young.
18
So
year old 18 year old in low A now, hitting very, very well. I saw where our friend Jeff Pontus from Baseball America called him a barrels machine. So some analysis of his abilities at the plate. He's not a big guy, Rodriguez isn't, but he has a lot of power, and that's a very intriguing possibility. He was a player of the month by the Cardinals organization and by my analysis as well, and who kind of come at the same thing from different angles. So Rodriguez, getting that promotion to Palm Beach is a big deal, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for that young man. We've had a really good, interesting, and fun group of promotions over the last couple of weeks since our last.
Yeah, so
Uh,
let's talk about the next step up. The big gun at Palm Beach was Josh Kross, and he finally now got the opportunity to go to Peoria. He was red hot the first month of the year, a little cooler in May, but still, the top run producer by a long shot for Palm Beach. Now he's getting a chance to Peoria, Josh Kross.
yeah, really exciting. It hasn't quite taken off just yet in Peoria, but it's only been a week or it's only been 7 games. Tonight is game number 7. And, I think the thing I'm going to be keeping a closest eye on with Josh Cross is if he can still hit for power from the left side and how his approach at the right side of the plate keeps up. Also, of course, there's the catcher intrigue with Josh Cross, first base intrigue with Josh Cross. You don't really know where it's going to be, but yeah, he's being a well-versed collegiate bat before being drafted, it's nice to see him at Peoria. This probably is where he should have been for a little bit, but again, that we're not going to get into that. That's not that big of a deal. He's here now, and now he has to perform because this is probably a little bit more age and talent appropriate.
There was some good news and some bad news with the rest of the Peoria roster, and that is unfortunately for him and for the Cardinals organization, Travis Honeyman went back on the injured list, his home away from home, and he's just hate to see that because he hasn't played more than about 30 games in any stretch in his career before he got hurt. But on the positive side at Peoria, one of your favorites, Joshua Baez, received the call to Double A, where he'll join Chase Davis and others in the Springfield outfield.
It's awesome to watch Joshua Baez get off to such a hot start at Double A too. He's hitting the ball with authority. It seems like, and maybe it's just because of how big he is, but he's getting challenged with a lot of stuff up in the zone by the opposing competition so far since being promoted to Double A, and he's answering that call. I still think there's some question marks about his ability to his reads off of the bat in right field. I think he gets kind of a slow jump for being a big, athletic, and very fast young man. But he does not. There has not been an at bat that I've watched, and I've probably watched about half of the at bats now at this point, where he's looked overmatched or out of place. And a year ago, if you would have told me that, I wouldn't have believed it. So he hit a monster home run on Tuesday night, and it's awesome to see him having success.
It's quite interesting to see that he went from one end of the spectrum to the other. I mean, late last season, folks may remember Baez got taken off the Peoria roster and sent back down to Palm Beach to try to figure things out. And on one hand, you say that's disappointing, and then you say, hey, a guy who's 20, 21 years old, sometimes that's necessary. And we see him, really now showing his own here in 2025, Joshua Baez. The other move, unless you have another position player that you want to talk about, an outfield spot was created at Springfield when Nathan Church was moved up to Memphis. And again, Church, a plus defender, can play anywhere in the outfield. But does he have enough offense to become a major leaguer someday?
I can't make up my mind, Brian. He's very good at being a defensive hitter. And I feel like the players who are defensive and can kind of spray the ball all over the place that end up buoying their average without maybe hitting the ball with authority at AA tend to fizzle out by the time they get to the major leagues, especially without power, like a power upside. And that's kind of how I feel about Nathan Church. I do think that there's, for lack of a better term, some Michael Ciani there. Like you said, he's a plus defender with a great arm, a world class arm that might be able to do some major league debuting because of all of that, and then slap the ball around and stay in the league for just a little bit.
And speaking of Michael Ciani, I want to go back for a minute because I forgot to make a point about Joshua Baez. I don't know what his stolen base total now is, but it was like 20 at Peoria, right?
Yeah, I don't know what it is either. I don't.
It's
I
a
think
lot.
he's.
It's a lot.
I think he's stolen two bases. Baez has since he's been at Double A. I watched him steal one, and now I'm blanking, Brian. I'm sorry, but again, that aggressiveness. We're still seeing him employ that athleticism, that speed, and being aggressive, which is good for his mind frame.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about now some of the pitching moves. They've been a little more recent. The Cardinals, didn't do it all at once, all in one day, but they did make all the pitching moves, and they announced those on Monday, 2 days ago. And the first move, the move that we've talked about off and on for weeks now, is Tekoah Roby getting the chance at Memphis. And maybe it was on the docket to do anyway, but another injury-prone player went back on the IL to create an opening on the rotation. And I'm talking about left-hander Drew Rom, who folks may remember was acquired from Baltimore late in 2023, made 8 starts late in the year, didn't do so well. Then was out all last year, missed part of this year, now finally got back. And he's back on the injured list. And Roby, who went 85 pitches, 6 2/3 innings his last time out for Springfield, showed everybody, hey, I'm really ready for the rigors of AAA. And we should be seeing him make his Memphis debut very, very soon.
I'm really excited to watch that debut too, Brian. I'll be glued to my laptop for that. With the concerns with Roby, other than health, because health is always the number one concern with somebody who's missed that much time, is how he manages right-handed bats. And he's changed his fastball, and the specs on his fastball look like they'll be able to maintain success against righties. And he's had a slider that also helps keep righties off of his fastball. So again, it'll be nice to see him at AAA. We'll get that data. We'll be able to do a little bit more evaluating because one of the big areas, part of the reason why he's had so much success at AA is how he's been able to neutralize righties, which is something that he had never really done, quite honestly, at least not at the level where strikeouts were coming.
There's another aspect at AAA that I don't know that you and I've ever talked about. We may have done it separately, but not together. And that is a different baseball, maybe, and a different strike zone.
Yeah.
How does that, I mean, does it affect pitchers uniformly, or is it going to be, different for each guy?
I think it'll be. I do think it affects pitchers uniformly. I don't know if it necessarily affects every pitcher the same way, but that baseball is the Major League Baseball. That's the first time that he'll get to use that on a daily basis. We've heard Quinn Matthews talk about how much different it is to throw with that baseball on a nightly basis, and how that's actually neutralized Quinn Matthews' curveball in the past because it doesn't spin the same way coming out of his hand. It makes it a less effective pitch. And he also, I know that at one point he had mentioned that Quinn Matthews had mentioned rather that he he has trouble commanding the baseball, getting a feel for the baseball. So and Drew Rom's talked about it. We've heard pitchers talk about just going from the Double A baseball and just the minor league differences in each level with the baseball, going to the Major League Baseball AAA, and there being an adjustment point needed, some adjustment time needed in order to maximize your stuff. But they're
And
I
also to
was
deal with the strike zone, right?
Oh, exactly, exactly, and also the challenge system. Getting into that a little bit, and yeah, I know that's Quinn Matthews talks about the biggest change for him. And I always go to Quinn Matthews because he's vocal about this stuff. People ask him, and he's also very articulate about it. But they're going to start spitting on that pitch that's on the right on the outside black, and Roby's more aggressive, I think, than Matthews is. Matthews is definitely a little bit more crafty, and it's not just because of how their stuff profiles; it's about how they pitch. I think Roby's a little bit more of a blunt instrument. So maybe the strike zone itself won't come into play, rather the contact that's made within the strike zone off of Roby. It's going to be a really, really fun thing to watch this week when he makes his debut. Again, as the Cardinals maybe start to take the kid gloves off of him a little bit this year, I'm really excited about it because, man, he's just got such good stuff, and September's right around the corner.
Yeah, and that the other guy on, and Kyle makes a great point here. Should mention, in case folks don't know, Roby is already on the 40-man roster, so that hurdle is not there. Conceivably, if the Cardinals want to call him up tomorrow, they could do that. Now, of course, he'll get sent right back down because that seems to be what happens with everybody who gets called up these days.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and we won't mention McGreevy, but hopefully he'll be back soon. But Roby, the thing I want to say one more thing about Roby is Roby was the Cardinal organization's pitcher of the month in May. Now, I'll tell you, if you take 10 or 12 or whatever innings pitched and just looked at ERA, Roby was barely in the top, wasn't even in the top 20. But strikeout rate, strikeout to walk ratio, very, very good. And that's the hat that the organization, that's the rack the organization hung their hat on in recognizing Roby. And we know the Cardinals tend to recognize those prospects that they want to, put a little jolt behind. But the reality is McGreevy had a better month than Roby, in my opinion, last month. And the guy we picked, and one of the things I struggle with every time when I do a pitcher of the month is, how do you weight relievers versus starters? Different jobs, different kinds of workload, different numbers, right? The strikeout guys are, the relievers are going to be better strikeout. But Andre Gurniel, I couldn't overlook Andre Gurniel's numbers last month. And granted, this is the guy that we've talked about here, but until 2025, he couldn't consistently avoid the walks. Now he's doing it. I don't understand why Gurniel hasn't got a chance to St. Louis yet. I'm surprised he didn't get that 40-man roster spot instead of your favorite, Ryan Velarde, Randy Velarde.
Yeah, Ryan Valade.
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Brian, I want to take a second to relish that moment because that is the perfect example of how the entire fan base feels about Ryan Valade right now. They hate him. No, I'm with you. I wanted to applaud you for going with Andre Gurniel because he would have been my choice as well. So a little confirmation bias there. I want to applaud you for doing what I would have done, which is never a good idea. Really.
I usually zig when the Cardinals zag or something like that. I don't know, but it's fun. And the one thing, just so you know, when you come to Cardinal Nation, our Player of the Month and Pitcher of the Month articles are free for everybody. And I pick a group of finalists. I usually cut the line based on ERA or on OPS, but you can read about the numbers for 10 or 12 guys, and you can make your own call. If you want to weight another factor higher than other and say this guy's my player, you can do that. So it's worth your time to come over and take a look at those free articles because it gives you a better feeling for kind of the guys that were hot last month.
Yeah, and since everybody is in my DMs and on my messages asking me why Andre Gurniel hasn't made a major league debut, it seems, or hasn't been added to the 40-man and then the 26-man, it's the perfect time to get studied up on that over at the Cardinal Nation. Learn a little bit more about Andre Gurniel because, with the amount of games that the Cardinals have with very few off days and a couple guys that they have that they could take off the 40-man or put on the 60-day IL. I would suspect that we will see Andre Gurniel at least by the All-Star break.
I think we're going to have to see him pretty soon because the way they keep sending these guys up and down, they're going to reach the limit of 5 for the season before the end of the year. And I'm talking about guys like Roy Croft and Swanson and some of the others that seem to be, and Munoz, who seem to be up and down all the time. Yeah. But anyway, let me get back to the pitching promotions. One of the other pitchers who got promoted, so the next step down from Roby to move into the Springfield rotation is Hancel Rincon. 23 years old, doesn't have tremendous strikeout stuff, but he's just is always consistently good. What
Yeah.
should we expect?
Brian, it's so funny, this kid who's more of a pitch to contact, has some good stuff, keeps the ball on the ground, at an acceptable rate, uh, allows a lot of light contact, opens up his Double-A debut by striking out the side in the first inning in order.
Mine had a little extra adrenaline, huh?
He was going a little bit. He was going a little bit. He walked the first batter in the second inning right before you and I started recording. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that he'll continue that. There's a lot of pitchability there. And as a matter of fact, part of the reason why guys like Gerardo Salas or Darlin Saladin were higher on like my own list is because they just kind of had better stuff in 2024 than Hancel Rincon did. Even though he had a really successful year, he's had a couple very successful years in a row. But again, without seeing the pitching data, it's hard to say. My understanding is that some of his stuff has changed. It looks like he has a slider and a changeup, pitches that have taken a step forward. Again, if we ever get to see the data, like the actual like aggregate data, because we've seen it with Palm Beach, but like you'll see that the change since Palm Beach is high. And I think you're going to have sustained success at Double-A just based on his pitchability and how some of his stuff has cultivated and developed. So, I don't think he's exactly like a Max Ragic type or, he's got his own kind of mold and he's got a funky delivery. So I think it'll be a really successful turn at Double-A for him in a way that like they've used players outside of the organization to eat innings at Double-A. Ryan Shreve comes to mind, guys like that. I think that you'll see that kind of success for someone like Hancel Rincon.
And then the next step up move was a guy who had been at Peoria since, at Palm Beach, since the 2023 draft, so all of 2024, 2025 to date. Jason Savacool, who's off to a tremendous start, ERA, I don't know, 1.6, something like that, strikeout per inning. Really doing well and deserve that shot now at high A.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I felt like in some ways all these promotions and he was kind of the man left behind, and they probably needed that stabilizing force at Palm Beach. I'm glad he got to, have a little bit more success at Palm Beach that he didn't necessarily have towards the end of the 2024 season. But that's again, Jason Savacool is at the level he's finally supposed to be at, and I'm hopeful that he can continue to have success. This is going to be a little bit more of a challenge for him than I think a lot of collegiate drafted pitchers that make the jump from low A to high A. So again, he could blow through high A, but I think it's going to be a little bit more of a test, and I'm anxious to get a gauge on.
Yeah, it's interesting. All three of the pitchers that we've talked about here in the promotion group were all repeated the level from last year. In a couple cases, repeated from the year before as well. So the Cardinals gave them a couple of months to show, what they can do this year at that level before they moved them up. And we're still trying to, understand what guidelines the new player development guys are using for promotions, because all the past history doesn't really apply anymore. So, we're starting to now get some data points. Another guy promoted. A guy that, again, you like. We haven't seen much of him because he's been injured since being drafted in 2020 the most time, and that's Jacob Odle. Jacob Odle was pitching once he was ready to go. He was pitching all spring, so I'm not sure why they put him in the Florida Complex League initially, other than maybe to build up his workload, build up a little more confidence. And then now Jacob Odle looks like it's going to be in the Palm Beach rotation.
I'm fired up for it. I'm really fired up for that. Candidly, if you would ask me who would find the mound first a year ago, after Alec Willis or Jacob Odle, I would have said Alec Willis. I don't know if Alec Willis. Yeah, you know what? Never mind. That's a name.
Sorry, Alec. If you're listening to your parents, we love you. We hope you'll be successful.
It's definitely a name that I don't know. But so that's all just to say that like this is a lefty who has a little bit of command issues. Was in the development league before he was drafted by the Cardinals, and who has some really big stuff. And I'm just anxious to be able to watch the really big stuff and how it plays stateside on MILB TV with some data attached to it. So again, I think I had him in like my top 35, 37, somewhere around there. I just think his arm is big. I think he's got some big stuff. And again, just another interesting arm that you can add to the Palm Beach and Peoria to a lesser degree, but the Palm Beach roster and get really excited to follow and learn more about.
So to play off your last comment, those who don't follow Kyle on X, formerly known as Twitter, shame on you. I don't think there are probably any of you watching this or listening that aren't, but if not, make sure you get over there because Kyle posted the other day. He did a reassessment of his prospect list and posted his top 25. And I'm going to take a look at that, and let it influence me a little bit before I do my next rankings, which we'll talk about next week. But we'll compare and contrast where Kyle sees guys rising or falling. Kyle's list is a little bit different in that he excludes guys with major league experience. So a Thomas, a JC, or a McGreevy, aren't going to be on that list. But the relative position of players is really what matters anyway. Because if you get hung up over number 6 versus number 8 versus number 10, you're looking at this the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent a little time over the weekend just trying to gather my thoughts, and instead of internalizing over it too much and overanalyzing it, I was just like, this is what I'm
You
going to
never do that, do you, Kyle? Do you ever overanalyze? And I don't know how many legal pads you must go through when you're doing your drafts in the off season, your drafting of your list.
Brian, if we again, I'm sorry for going on a tangent here, but so I cannot live in my apartment anymore. I have to move, and in the process, I've been boxing up stuff and throwing trash away. And you would believe it because you just called it. I have so many notebooks. I don't they're all over the place. I have one of those coffee tables that raises, the top raises, and it's just notebooks in there. And then I've got one closet, it's just notebooks. And then on every table, there's notebooks. And then at work, I've got notebooks where I don't even have time at work. How is this happening, Brian?
Speaking of notebooks,
Yes.
to make a commercial for the Cardinal Nation 2025 Prospect Guide. I'm running a little low on Spiral Bound, so if you were holding off, I don't know why you'd wait, but you want to buy your Spiral Bound pretty quick before we run out. And it's also available in PDF version. And if you subscribe, you can buy the PDF. Subscribe to Cardinal Nation, you can buy the PDF at half price, and that's a pretty good deal. And you can use it to follow all the prospects in the system. And it's something that I do for every year, and make it available to the public. And make sure you also consider subscribing to the Cardinal Nation and read our good content from our local reporters and our minor league affiliates. And I might throw something out there now and then. And I also do document every transaction that occurs across the system, and I write up who's moving where and why, and the ramifications of it if I possibly can. And that kind of allows people to keep up with what's going on because, as we said, these transactions trickle out all the time. The Cardinals formally announced the signing of 3 more international players. Who are they? Where do they fit? There's a lot of questions about what's going on in the organization. And I think it's fair to say that in terms of news of the Cardinals minor leaguers, nobody's on top of it more than we are. And I'm biased, but I think I can honestly say that we have new content about the Cardinals in the minor leagues 365 days a year, bar none.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it, Brian. Very well said. Very well stated.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle. And I appreciate your insight in the prospects. As I said, next week here at Wednesday with Walton and Reis, we're going to dive more into the prospect rankings as we see them here in June as opposed to May, which was kind of our first, re-ranking of the year. We usually wait, 6 weeks or so until the players have really established a track record. But there's some guys that are definitely trending up, and there's some guys that, let's face it, are trending down as well. And, we're going to talk about both. And that should be a lot of fun next week on the 18th. So until then, we will close this edition. Kyle, thank you again for your insight, and we will talk to you next time around.